Hello sweet friends, it's Sarah at Crochet.With.Coffee. Thank you so much for joining me for this tutorial for our all-in-one granny square bag. So this bag does have a lining. I did use a men's dress shirt for the lining, but you can use whatever fabric you would like. And I'll go step by step on how we built this bag and how we lined it. So let's get started. All right, for this bag, what we're going to do is we're going to be making these squares with the all-in-one Red Heart Granny Square yarn. Now, if you don't want to use this, you don't need to. You could follow the tutorial and use whatever yarn you'd like. I am not going to be showing you how to structure your colors to make sure that they line up for every square, but I do have a tutorial helping you with that if you need a little bit more help with lining up your colors to make sure each row does its color change properly. And then you also have the Yarnspirations website that I will link in the description. They have videos on there to help you with that as well. This square is not the same one that comes on the package of the all-in-one granny square yarn, but if you want to use a different square, you can feel free to use that as well. So just want to put that out there for you. If you would prefer using the tutorial for Yarnspirations, I have that linked in the description for you. So go ahead and follow whatever instructions you would like for that. I forgot to let you know this color is called Black Moody Cherry. So that is the color that we have for this bag. And we are going to be making 10 in total. So let's start with our square. I am going to start with a magic ring. If you would like to start with a chain 4 and make a ring out of that, then you can do that instead. But I'm going to start with a magic ring. So the way that I start that, I lay the yarn across my 2 fingers here and hold it down with my thumb. I'm going to wrap it around my fingers twice, like this, and then wrap it a 3rd time, crossing over and then holding on to that with my other 2 fingers over here. So I'm using a 5.5 millimeter hook, but if you have a different hook size that helps you reach the gauge and allows you to do your color changes easier, please feel free to do that. So whatever works best for you, but I am using a 5.5 millimeter. So we're just going to pull that yarn through those 2 loops on your fingers. And I just give it a little twist when I pull it through, and then I'm going to grab this yarn and pull it through for a chain. Okay, now you have your ring here. I'm going to chain 5, and that chain 5 is going to count as your first double crochet and a chain 2 space. So I had 1 to start, and then I added 4 more to have a total of 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Did too many there. All right, so 5 total chains. Now I'm going to put 3 double crochets into that ring. All right, and chain 2 and do another 3 doubles into that ring. Chain 2 for corner, another 3 doubles into the ring. Okay, so I have 1, 2, and 3 sides completed. I'm going to do 2 chains. And then since our first chain 5 is counting as a double crochet and a chain 2 corner space, we're only going to do 2 doubles to finish up. So you can see my color changed earlier than I needed it to. So I'm just going to pull out a few stitches and do those a little bit tighter. And that is the trick to this yarn. If it's if your color changes too soon, then just tear out a few stitches and do your stitches a little bit tighter. And then if you have too much color left, then rip out a few stitches and use a looser tension so that you use up more yarn. And that should help even out your stitches so that everything lines up properly. And again, I go over that in more in depth for you in that tutorial I have linked in the description. All right, so we have our chain 5 space that counts as a double crochet and a chain 2 space. Then we have 3 doubles, chain 2, 3 doubles, chain 2, 3 doubles, chain 2, 2 doubles. Now we are going to tighten up this ring by pulling the tail here. We are going to look for the loop that closes, that starts closing up. So I'm going to pull that tail and see which one of those loops starts moving. So I'm going to grab that loop that moved, and I'm going to tighten up the other loop. And then that's tightened up in the center. I'm going to pull the tail to tighten up that other loop there, and you're all set. You have a nice closed up center. So now we're going to slip stitch right into that chain 5. So not into an individual chain, but just into that space with a slip stitch. All right, now you're ready for your next row. We're going to chain 5 again, and that's going to be how we start each row. And that always counts as a double crochet and a chain 2 corner space. Now in this corner, we are going to put 3 double crochets into that corner space. I also find that for the tension of this, if I keep it a little bit on the tight side at the beginning, then I can loosen up through the rest of the sides if I need to, or just keep your tension neutral to begin with, but just be mindful that it's not too loose. All right, so once we have completed those 3 doubles, we're going to skip over the next 3 doubles and work into the next corner. So we are going to be doing our corner, and we are working every corner the same way. It's going to be 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets into each corner. So we're going to skip over that and work right into the corner space, doing that 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet. And like I said, that is the same for each corner. I'm going to skip over this next 3 double and work right into the next corner with another 3 doubles, chain 3, chain 2, 3 doubles, chain 2, and 3 doubles. All right, working into the next chain for the corner, 3 doubles, chain 2, 3 doubles. So I see I have a little bit too much yarn I only have 2 more doubles left. So I'm going to unwind this a little bit and do my stitches a little bit looser. All right, once we get back around and your colors are lined up, you're going to slip stitch into that chain 5 space again, just like we did the first round. And again, we're just going to start with chain 5 and do the same thing for each corner. So we're going to start with this first corner being 3 double crochets. And now in this row, if you're not familiar with granny squares, this row is going to have a side space. So you're going to skip over this cluster and start working in that side space. And all of the side spaces are the same, and they just have 3 double crochets. So each side space has 3 double crochets. Each corner space has 3 doubles, chain 2, 3 doubles. All right, so we are hopping over to the next corner, and that is going to be the same, 3 doubles, chain 2, 3 doubles. All right, finishing our corner. And again, the side space here has 3 double crochets in there, just like every side space. All right, I'm going to continue this round, and I will meet you back when we are ready for our next round. All right, so for our next row, you can see we are almost done. So we are on row 4 of 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're on row 4 of the total of 5. So we are just going to do this square exactly, or this row exactly the same way that we did the previous rows, but just keep in mind that you have 2 side spaces this time. So starting with 5 chains and working the 3 doubles into your corner, skipping over and working into the space with 3 doubles, and skipping over that into the next space, 3 more doubles. Okay, and then skipping over and going into your corner with your 3 doubles, chain 2, 3 doubles. And you're just going to work the same way all the way across your square, and I'll meet back up with you for our last round because there's a little bit different instruction that I want to give for that one. All right, so the only difference that we are going to do for this next round, we're still doing our corners exactly the same, still doing our sides exactly the same. The only thing I am going to adjust is my tension. I am going to, on purpose, do a tight row all the way around. So I am going to make sure that my tension is on the tighter end. And because what I want that to result in is having a tail of yarn at the end. Now, if your tension ends up that it does not allow you a tail, that's fine because we are going to be using the remaining skein after our 10 squares are made. We're going to be using the remaining yarn to create the rest of the purse and attach all the seams. So you will have black left over, or whatever your outside color is, you will have remaining yarn of that. So you could just take some of your yarn. This is my leftover after my purse is completed. So I do have some yarn remaining, and I made sure that I had black left because I am going to use that for the seams, and I'll show you that in just a second. But your goal is to have a tail of yarn after you finish your last round. So that is why I'm going to make sure that my tension is tight all the way around this last row. So go ahead and finish up your last row and complete it exactly the way that you did before, and I'll meet back with you when we are ready to attach our squares together. All right, so this square is complete, and this one did not end up giving a good amount of black yarn, so I will be using that supplemental black from the remainder of the skein. So I just want to let you guys know that sometimes you get a good length, sometimes you don't. But anyway, that is what we have right now, and I just want to show you how to sew in your ends while we are here. And because we're putting a lining in this bag, this part is not as necessary as it would be if you were making a blanket or a garment or something like that. But I just want to show you how to do it because it is something good to know. So I take a tapestry or yarn needle. I prefer these metal ones, but if you like the plastic ones, you can do that as well. So the easiest way I've found to thread the yarn into this needle is I fold the yarn over the needle like this, and I pinch it next to the needle, and then I just take that little loop and I try to wiggle it into the eye of the needle like that. It works very well for me. Sometimes if the yarn is a little bit thicker, it might take a little bit more maneuvering to get that to work, but that's my favorite way to thread a needle with yarn. So, all right, you are going to make 3 passes back and forth. You could do more if you'd like, but 3 gives it a really nice secure hold, and then you can clip your yarn. So I am just weaving my needle through these stitches. So you just want the yarn to get intertwined. And then when I pull this all the way through here, I am not tugging hard because that will cause this part of your project to pull. I'll show you. It'll pull it and make it change the shape of it. So you just really want to make sure that when you pull your yarn through, you are just pulling gently. All right, so I am going to go back the opposite direction, and I'm just catching a little thread so I don't go back the same direction or the same path. So I'm going to grab an extra piece of yarn there and just do the same thing, just weave it right through those stitches. Again, not tugging at the end, just giving it a little snug pull. And then going back one more time. Okay. All right, and then at that point, you can clip your yarn right next to your project, and it won't come unraveled because you don't want to clip it before you weave in the ends or it will come unraveled. All right, so that is all tied in there. And because this is not long enough, I could also do that, but I'm going to save that for later. And I'm going to show you how to attach your squares together. So thread your tail of yarn, or if you have another piece of yarn, you can go ahead and thread that. We are going to thread the needle, and then we're going to put our squares back to back. So this is the front side. This is the back side. You can see it's got a little bit more of a tidy look on the front side than it does on the back side. It looks a little bit more bumpy here, and this looks a little bit more crisp. So you want to make sure that you have both backs together. So front side, and I'm going to put the back sides together like that. I know this is black yarn. It is a little bit difficult to see, but I will hopefully be able to turn up the lighting on this part while editing. All right, so you are going to see where your 2 chains are here. You have on this side 2 chains from your corner, and on this side you have 2 chains from your corner. And what we're going to do is match those up. We're going to work in both chains. So I'm working in the first chain on the front square and the back square. Right? And in the next chain. So I'm only grabbing 1 loop from the front square and 1 loop from the back square. And I'm catching the back loop. So when you're looking at the front of the piece of the front of the work, there is a loop here. So I'm going in 1 loop here and 1 loop over here. And you can join these any way that you want. The reason I'm sewing them like this is because I'm trying to use the yarn from the skein. If you want to use a different color, or if you have extra black that you want to connect your squares a different way, please feel free to do that. We're just doing it this way so that we can just use one skein of yarn. All right, so now we are going to be doing the same thing throughout the whole side. And you can see on these stitches, we've got a front loop here and we've got back loops. So see that V stitch there? There's that front part of the V and the back part of the V. We are working in the back part of the V. And because we are back to back with this square, it's going to be the opposite. So it's going to be the closest loop right there. All right, so the two loops that are closest together. And again, if you have a different way you want to do that, you can feel free to do that. We're just going to go and attach these. I am matching stitch for stitch. So I always pop my fingers into the spaces between the clusters so I can keep these in line. So I know this is the first stitch, this is the first stitch over here. So I'm going to go in the top of that stitch, the top of that stitch, and I just match them like that. And I do that all the way across the square. And then on the opposite end, I'm going to do the same thing and make sure I work into both of those chains. So the first chain of this corner and the second chain of the corner. All right, so I'm just going to make sure that that is pulled. I'm making sure that this thread is pulled tight all the way through, but it doesn't restrict the stretch between the sides, so that there's still stretch here. It's not restricted at all, but that these stitches are nice and tight within it. All right, so then you're going to do the same thing and just weave in your ends. So you're just going to go back and forth 3 times. Like we did our other weaving in the tails. And then you're just going to clip your yarn. And our next step is to attach these. So you would do 5 strips like this. So you'll have 5 sets of 2 together. So 2, 4, 6, 8, and then you're going to attach those. So I have already attached the 8 that I have here. It's the back side. I've already attached the 8 that I have here. So these are all attached the same way. So we're just going to add our next row here. And like I was mentioning, I'm just going to take some of this extra yarn and just cut a length. I like to take a length that is twice as long as what the space is that I'm tying up. So 1 and 2. I give it a little, like, couple inches on each side. Okay, and thread your yarn there. And now I'm going to attach these 2 together. So again, the same way, I'm just going to do back to back, and I'm going to start in the corner, and I'm going to start on the first chain of the corner here and the same on the opposite side of that corner. I'm going to go into that space on the first square, second square, and pull my yarn through until I have a couple inches left, because I'm going to need that to weave in my ends. And then I'm going to go right back through the same space that we went the first time and hold on to that tail and just pull the yarn through like that. And then you have a really secure hold, so your tail will not pull through your stitches as you stitch up the side. All right, so I did my first chain. Now I'm going to stitch up my second chain of that corner, front square and back square, and just do that exactly the same way. Now, when you get to your space here, just line those up the best that you can and just stitch in a way that, goes evenly over that space. And just remember, keeping your fingers into those little corner spaces there will keep everything lined up just fine. So go stitch for stitch like we did earlier. Matching stitch on the front for stitch on the back. And going all the way across. And like I said, across the seam, you're just going to do stitches evenly across that seam, just making sure that when you get to your next square that you still have your stitch for stitch lined up. All right, so I'm going to do the rest of this and finish it off like we did just a second ago with our first join, and then we will start the process of the handle. So this one is preference, but I'm going to show you the size that I do. So using the same hook and still the same yarn that we were using, we're going to start our strap. So we are going to start with a slip knot, and we're going to just chain. So it doesn't matter how many chains you do as many as you would like, and you're just making this the length that you want your strap to be. So remember, this is going to be connecting at the bottom of your bag, going up around your shoulder, and then back down to the bottom of the bag. So hold the bag up to your side and just see where you want it to land. And keep in mind that the longer that you make this strap, the narrower your strap is going to be, because our goal is to only use this one skein for this bag. Obviously, if you want to do something different and add different color, you can absolutely do that. But our goal is to just use up only this skein. The longer you make your strap, the narrower your strap is going to be. The shorter your strap, the wider it will be, because of just the way that the yarn is dispersed over the strap. So I am going to get this to the length that I want, and then I will give you what my stitch count or my chain count is in just a second. I ended up doing 200 chains, but you can do longer or shorter. Just remember, it will adjust the width, and not all the skeins have exactly the same yardage on it. They are guaranteed at least 417 yards, but it does fluctuate sometimes because it says that it is a guaranteed 14 square skein, but I typically get 15 squares out of each skein. So I know they give that little buffer just in case it's not an entire 15th square left. So just want to throw that out there for you. All right, so I am going in the second chain from my hook, and I am single crocheting. So I'm just going to single crochet into each chain all the way across, and we are just doing single crochets for this entire strap. So I will show you at the end how we're doing our turn, just in case you're not familiar with that, but we are literally just going to be working back and forth for this entire strap until we have the width that we want for the strap. So I'll be right back when we get to the end, and I'll show you how to turn for your next row. All right, so we are at the end of our row. We're just going to chain one, turn our work, and work into that first stitch. If it helps to put a stitch marker in your first and last stitch, then feel free to do that, because you see our little chain one there could be mistaken as a chain or as a stitch. So you can just pop a stitch marker into your first stitch. So you know you did one stitch, pop a stitch marker in there, and you know that is where you're going to end your row. All right, you could do that on both sides. Now we're just going to single crochet all the way across this stitch, or across this strap here, and you're just going to work the same back and forth and just do that until you have the thickness that you want. And remember, you do need to do your seams, so leave enough for sewing up your seams of the bag. And also, if you want to do a little single crochet border around the top flap and like the top opening of your bag, just make sure you're leaving yarn left over so that you can do some of that. So I'm going to leave a little bit of yarn here. I'm probably going to leave like maybe 3 colors left or so. You know, that's going to be my goal, but it is, you know, trial and error. I can't tell you how much yardage exactly you'll need for your surrounding opening, but just to throw that out there, if you want to leave some yarn for that, go ahead and leave some yarn, or you can leave the edges rough. It's totally up to you. So I'll be back when I get my strap the width that I want for my bag, or when I run out of yarn. So I will be back in just a moment to show you what I have. So the strap is all done. Mine ended up being 9 rows wide. So that's what mine looks like. Yours might end up being thicker or thinner depending on how much yarn you have left, and also how short you made your strap. So this is what mine is looking like. My goal was to have 3 colors left of my skein of yarn. So I have the dark red, the light red, and the black left. And that's what I had. So my last 3 rows, dark red, light red, and black. So that was what I left, just to have a little bit of something to seam up the sides of the bag, and also give a little bit of a trim around it, just a single crochet trim around the opening of the bag. So that is what I had left. And let's go put the lining in the bag. Okay, all the squares are put together now. So it is 5 by 2. So I've got 5 rows of 2 or 2 rows of 5, however you want to look at it. And I have my strap that I made. Now I'm going to show you how I cut out the fabric for this in just a second, but what the goal is we are going to be lining the strap, because you see how, all right, see how stretchy this is? See how not stretchy this is? The goal for this purse is to not have a stretchy purse. So if you have used crocheted bags or purses in the past, you probably know that they stretch. Cotton is a better one for that, but if you want to use any acrylic like this, or you want to use whatever yarn you have on hand and you don't want to go with a specific yarn, then it will always stretch, just because of the type of fabric that it is. But if you don't want a stretchy bag, that is what we're doing with this. So you can see these stitches are not stretching. All right, so we are going to be lining these pieces, and we are going to be lining them separately and attaching them later. So I do have this lined already, and I used an old shirt. I took this shirt, I laid it out, and I tried to map out where it was that would be the best way to get the fabric for lining this bag. And what I found was I needed to cut off the top, and I followed the seams, and I cut off the shoulders, cut off the sleeves, all of that. I did have wonderful suggestions for this bag to add pockets. Either you could cut the pocket off of the actual shirt and put that in, or you could use the sleeves. I had that suggestion as well, but I do not sew. So that sounded a bit much for me, but I just want you to know there are options out there. I am sure that there are loads of tutorials on how to make the lining of a bag really fancy, but we are just lining it with fabric so that it becomes less stretchy and also that your items will not fall through the bag, especially with it being a granny square. how we're lining this. So I did show a little bit in that clip how to do the lining. I showed how to cut out the fabric. I do want to mention that when I cut the fabric for this portion of the bag, that I did not leave enough space. So I want you to keep in mind when you are cutting your fabric for your project and you lay this out on your fabric, you don't even need to use a shirt. You can use whatever fabric you have on hand. But I want you to keep in mind that when you lay, let me do it the opposite way. So you would have your fabric down, and then you would lay your crocheted piece on top of it. What I did was I cut just outside of this crocheted piece. And what I would recommend is cutting about 1 inch, just so you have enough wiggle room so that you are not struggling to fold in your edges, because what we're going to do next, I'll share how we do the next part, but I just want you to have enough space around, all the way around your piece. So when you are cutting out your fabric, just leave a good inch, that would be plenty, around the outside edge. So how we are doing this, I am going to lay my crocheted project down after you have your pieces cut out. And this is the same for the strap. It's the same technique. So, follow it for that. I'm going to lay this out. Now I'm going to take my fabric and lay it onto the project. So I want to lay wrong sides together for this. So this is the wrong side of my crocheted panel. That's the right side. This is the side I want out, that I want people to see. This is the side I don't want people to see. Just the same as this piece of fabric. This is the side I want to be seen, or I want to use on the inside of the bag. This is the side I want hidden. So see this seam? The inside of the bag, or the inside of the lining that I don't want to be seen, and the inside of the square that I don't want to be seen are going to be touching. So we're going to lay those together. Now, lay this out. Make sure your crocheted panel is straight. Make sure that your cloth and your lining is straight. And then what we are going to be doing is pinning this. And it is really a good idea to pin your sewing, because it does shift as you put it through the sewing machine, or if you're hand sewing, whatever technique you are using. Now, I'm not a very good hand sewer, and I'm not good at the sewing machine really, but hand sewing takes a very long time for me. It's easier to just run it right through the sewing machine. All right, so to prep this to get ready to sew, we are going to take the edge of the fabric and just curl it over and match it up with this side of your crocheted item. And what my goal is to fold it over and line it up in a spot where the last little loops here are still visible and available to get to, because we are going to be using those loops to sew up the sides and your strap. So I'm just going to put a little pin right there. And you're going to do that all the way around the edge of the bag. Okay, so just do that all the way around. Again, you're just taking the raw edge of your fabric here and you're tucking it underneath. And then just pinning that down. Okay, and do that all the way around your project. So now that our bag is put together, I am going to fold it over so that we have 4 full squares on one side and we have 6 squares. Look at all my string from sewing. All right, and 6 squares on the other side. So 4 on one side, 6 on the other. Now what we're going to do is take our strap that we have created and lined. So now we have a lined strap and a lined bag. And we are going to line this up. So we are going to put a marker in the center of the strap. And then that is going to go right where that seam is for the square. So that is where we know that that is going to end up. When we lay it flat all the way open like this, don't mind all my strings. I had issues with my sewing machine. So, all right, so we have our strap lined up with our seam here. And then I'm just going to take a couple more stitch markers and I'm going to see where it lands, and I'm just going to put my stitch marker in the purse and then into the strap. Okay, and then I'm going to do that on this other side as well. Okay, so we know that's where it lands. Now, while I have this open, I'm going to do the same thing. So I have the end. I'm going to make sure that this is not twisted in any way, but then I'm going to go and do the same thing on this side. So I've got the center here. So I have my center mark there, and then marking it on both sides of the strap. Like that. All right, now I'm going to fold it back up. So again, 4 squares on one side, 6 on another. And then we're going to take a couple more stitch markers and just take the strap from where it is attached here, and we're going to take it from there and line it up on the side of the rest of the bag here. So wherever it lands, I'm just going to put the stitch marker there and just do one more right there in the center. And then do that on the other side of this strap. So we have where it is lined up and where it lands on the bag. So I'm going to match attaching it at the top of that square here. So this square, I'm going to put my stitch marker there and make sure that that is lined up with that. Put a little stitch marker into the strap and just do a stitch marker every once in a while so that you can get everything secured and lined up. All right, so we have the structure of the bag attached to the strap, and then the strap attached to the back of the bag. And just do that with this other side. All right, now we have the straps placed as the sides of the bag, and then the bag itself. And then we are just going to do the same thing that we did with the squares, and we're going to sew up the sides of this bag. So as an example, just gonna take that leftover yarn that I had and just grab a grab a piece, about double the length of what you're going to sew up. So I'm going to go all the way around the squares here, the bottom of the strap, and the other side. So I'm just going to do, twice that, maybe a little bit more. And then thread my yarn and get ready to sew that up. So obviously you're going to start from one end and go wrap around. So I'm just going to switch it this way. So I'm going to attach my yarn the same way that I did with the squares. Just go into the space, leave a little bit of a tail so that I can weave that in later, and then go right back through that same space. And just match up my stitches, stitch for stitch, all the way down. And then just sew all the way up around the side, for this side and the other side, and you are all set with the assembly. And then I'll show you what we're going to do for the last bit of it. Now that everything is put together, we have all of the sides seamed up here. Now the last thing that I wanted to do was just put a single crochet border around the flap of the purse. And if I have enough, then I might go across this section as well, right across the opening of the bag. So I am going to start on the right side of the bag. So over on this side, I'm going to start this way because I want my stitches to be facing the right side of the bag. And you can attach this any way you want. If you want to attach it with a slip stitch and chain one, you can do that. If you want to tie it on, you can. I'm just going to do a standing single crochet. And what that looks like, so just go into the first stitch that you want your edging to start on. So I'm just going to start right here. And pull my yarn through. I have 2 loops on my hook. I'm going to wrap around and bring through those 2 loops on my hook. That is a standing single crochet. And then I'm just going to do a single crochet. I'm going to go in the back loop only, kind of the same way as when we seamed up the edges. You're just going to go on the back side of the stitch here. If you want to go in both loops, you can do that. And then I'm just going to go all the way around the outside. This color may change to red, and I'm okay with that because I like it to be a little bit unique, so I don't mind that. If you want to do a matching color yarn, you can do that as well. If you want it to match the outside edge for sure, then you can use that. But I'm just going to go with whatever yarn is left of this ball that I had left. So I'm just going to work my way around the edge. In the corners, I'm just going to do 3 single crochets in the corner just to turn that corner. So I worked in the first chain, and then I'm going to work 3 singles in that second chain, and that's going to turn my corner for me. Just going to turn this around and work all the way across here, and the same as when we were joining our squares together, just stitch across the seam as best you can and do the corner the same way that you did, and then we'll meet back up when we reach the end of the flap and we will go from there. So I've worked all the way around the flap of my purse here, and I have one last stitch available, so I'm just going to do a slip stitch in that space. And chain 1, clip my yarn. I'm going to weave in my ends for that, but before I do that, I'm just going to do a row across this section too, just to make that nice and crisp. And it looks like mine will turn into red, and I am okay with that. So I'm just going to do the same thing, just do a slip knot and attach my yarn on this side the same way I did for the flap, and then work my way across, and then I will clip my yarn, weave in my ends, and you are all done with your bag. All right, now that your bag is all done, nice and trimmed around the edges, you've got your lining in, just one more thing that I wanted to share with you in case you want to do this. So if you look on the inside of the bag, you can see that you can still see some crocheted parts here. If you would like to take a needle and thread and sew from one side of this fabric to the other side of the fabric and really cinch that in, you can do that just to make it so that those are all closed up. But really the main reason for this lining is to make sure that the bag doesn't stretch, and that what we have lined will allow it to keep from stretching. If you have really tiny items, these sides that are open, and it's only open in this area that we seamed up, but if you are carrying really thin, small items that could get through here, then you might want to sew that up. But other than that, you are all done, and that is just an option if you want to do something like that. But the bag is all completed. Right, so that is our all-in-one granny square bag. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope you find joy in little things.